He's in the train, I think. So
yeah. I think we still have the beer. The other right beer. Fino. Hi, Mark. Good afternoon. Okay, so guys, we'll wait for 2 minutes.
Katerina, yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say that some people lost the link. They are not finding. So.
All right. Javier, do you think it will be useful on the announcements? All right. Noon already sent the announcement on the channel.
I think this link we can send. The next one we cannot. No. So probably.
All right. Yeah. So before we kickstart, how are everyone feeling today? Oh, cheerful.
Because tomorrow is a holiday.
I usually ask how are the energy levels from 1 to 10, just to see how much we need to push people. Where 10
energy levels.
Like, 10 is like the equivalent of 2 or 3 Red Bulls, and 1 is I'm just about to go to sleep.
Okay.
I think it gives a nice vibe of the room.
Right. So 1 is about to sleep, and 10 is 3 Red Bulls. Okay.
Okay, is that what 6 or 7? 7. Come on, we are confident, right?
7, 8.
Nice.
5, 5,
8,
5,
5.
8,
3, Ricardo. 3. Oh yeah, Javier did not come today. Sorry, mate. 6.
It's okay if you're not on the Red Bull kind of.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say those are very decent levels. I think we can work with that. Then we can ask at the end, just see what have we done to people's energy with our webinar.
I honestly think, guys, that this is like, these smartwatches, every time you go for a run or something, it tells you your performance has increased by 2 points. Your performance has decreased by 3 points. And I think when we are working, actually, there should be a feature that also monitors that. You start your day of work, and then after 1 or 2 meetings, we will probably all getting these notifications of your performance has decreased by 2 points. And I think that would be very interesting for product managers. So people take down a note on this one. Could be good for a hackathon.
Nice one. Yeah. And also the actions levels, right, Diana? Like
exactly.
action levels increasing.
You need 10 more hours of sleep to recover from the previous week of work. Yes, exactly. It's like training coaches, but for PMs.
Yeah. Celso, you were about to say something? Yeah.
No. I definitely agree. I think some meetings they drain all our energy out. Some of them they give like a nice ROI when we're working with people we really like. So I think it could be useful to track that for sure.
Yes, indeed. So guys, I will kickstart here the beginning of the session, okay, while people are still joining. So I think we have a fairly decent number to kickstart a little bit. So most of you that are here already know the community, but in reality, a lot of people that enroll actually didn't belong to our community. Like 1/4 of the people that applied didn't know us. So we kind of did a small intro, not going to much extent, but just a quick info about the Impostor PM and the mental health series and what we are expecting today. So who is the Impostor PM? We are a community, first and foremost, driven by product managers to product managers, right? And our aim is to create safe space for people to share, to learn, and to embrace opportunities for growth. We embrace a lot this ethos in everything that we do. So most of you already been in clubs, or at least presented on some of the clubs, or either been on the growth sessions, which are the sessions that we held online, or participated in any kind of dinner or networking event that we promote. And I think most of us that are here can actually feel how it is to be in the club and to share and to learn with others. And this peer-to-peer experience is what our community strives to do in everything that we do, create a safe space and create value through the community approach of embracing the peer-to-peer exchange and transaction of knowledge. Today, we are more than 500 members active in the community, so people that are within our Slack, 200 something active on the several initiatives that we generally conduct, and we are pretty much almost on the 2K followers. So we need more 4 people on LinkedIn to achieve the 2K number. So bear with us, almost there, yay, we'll do a big celebration about it. We have a very active and engaging community. You can find us all in our clubs, mostly Lisbon, Porto, Braga, Coimbra, but we'll have surprise for this year. Oh, good, Jose. Let the wives. My husband is now an active, Impostor PM guy, even though he's not a proper product, but he's always keeping an eye on me. No, we don't want fake accounts. That's true. Yeah, but this is where we are at the moment. So just a quick go through our vision and mission. So our vision is to guarantee that product managers don't feel like imposters, who could tell, right, for our name. And that our aim is to achieve that by creating opportunities for us to grow and learn together. Okay, so every kind of initiative that we have or promote, we have always this on the back of our heads, and we try to achieve that in every interaction that we do within the community and even with the people that partner with us and share this mission with us in the initiatives that we drive forward. Okay. What is the mental health series? So the mental health series will be a series of sessions that will happen throughout the next months that will culminate in October. Those sessions will mostly be held online, but in October we'll have a lot of surprise for you because October is a mental health month by the United Nations. So we expect this to be a series of sessions all about mental health or mental health related topics and well-being, because we want to continue to explore the link between the mental health and the product management, because it's important, right? It is the core of our community to bring that mental health aspect, and the fact that we are the Impostor PMs is something that is very, very aligned with our mission and the fact that we deal with that on a daily basis. So the main purpose is to create awareness, raising this awareness, continue to build our community. We need to know that we are not alone, so we are here collectively embrace and face the challenge, and we want to keep you with tools like strategies, small things that we can improve and strengthen in our mental health. The peer-to-peer interaction is also one of the tools that we use inside of the community, but we are here to explore other tools as well. So now, without further ado, I'll introduce our guests, our beloved Celso Costa. I know Celso for a while, so this one is funny because we met each other at the university almost 15 years ago, and Celso is also a very strong mental health advocate. He knew about our Impostor PM. We started to talk, the founding team, and together with him, and we decided to invite Celso into this partnership of kickstart our series, which is very special to us. He's a psychology and also a CEO and founder of Next Level Hub. You can search all about it. We'll talk a little bit about that. He has over 10 years of experience in mental health and well-being, basically on skills development, mental health, also other topics related to psychology. So I think we can tell all about it. And one of his biggest achievements, or the one that he's proud of, is the fact that he was awarded by being one of the most innovative teachers in education due to a development training soft skill program with teens that he actually does with kids as well. So it's not only with teens. So it's actually adults, teens, and kids, all ranges of ages. So please welcome Celso.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Sarda, for that awesome intro. Let me just, first of all, just check if you can see the presentation. Can I just check?
Yes, I'll stop sharing mine. I just want to say something before we kickstart. We have two sections of this series, so we'll start with the first with everyone, so it's a more generic session, and then we'll have a second part, which is the exclusive one for people that actually showed interest on the exclusive one. So we'll have to do our SOP, and then we'll have to move to a second link that we'll share with you. If you notice on your calendars, you have two URLs that you can join, two rooms to join. Just to let you know that. Okay. Yeah, let's go.
Okay, let's go. Good. Can you see it? Just to check.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So again, great pleasure to be with you here today. The whole goal, I think it has been very well explained, but my purpose with this session is essentially to bring clarity to mental health, to some of its main building blocks, to kind of help you identify and be on the lookout for some of the challenges that could be compromising your mental health, and wrapping up with some actionable insights. In other words, what can we do to help recover, to protect, or even to enhance our mental health? So, starting with a few essentials on mental health. I mean, mental health has always been important, but I think in the last few years it has become very, very popular. And to some extent, we talk about mental health so much that sometimes we lose focus on what it really is. And I would like to start with this idea that physical health and mental health, they are the same, right? I mean, we all have our signs and symptoms that typically lead to consequences. And I think a great example is pain. So imagine you go for a run and you start to have a pain in your knee. This pain is giving you a precious information, kind of alerting you that you might have an injury. If you choose to ignore the pain and it increases, then we know that the injury is probably increasing, right? Because our body is increasing the levels of pain. And so pain for the body is incredibly important, right? And it has to be unpleasant to let us know that something might not be okay. So when we bring mental health to the discussion, it's a very similar system. We also have signs and symptoms that lead to consequences, but instead of having physical pain as the main source of emotion, main source of information, we have our emotions, especially anxiety, because anxiety is usually one of the emotions that most people experience as being unpleasant. So we're going to be talking a lot about some of these signs and symptoms, but you can think about if typically you have great clarity in how you think, right? And suddenly you start to have this sort of mental fog. You start to notice that you're now more tired. You feel less available to interact with others, right? Maybe your sleeping patterns have changed. Again, these will produce emotions, and these emotions become a really important source of information, right? So to this extent, physical health and mental health, they are the same. However, physical health and mental health, they are not the same, because some issues look like this. They're clearly visible. We can spot them. We know what's going on, while others, like mental health, look like this, right? We could all be right now enduring very significant struggles in terms of mental health, and we wouldn't be able to notice just by looking to each other. And so that becomes the tricky part on mental health, because it becomes invisible to others and sometimes invisible to ourselves. And so this is challenge number one. How can we develop an awareness that let us know what is going on inside our minds? And so I'd like to challenge you throughout the rest of our time to think of our emotions as the mind's immune system. So the body has an immune system and the mind has an immune system. And our main weapon is actually our emotions, how we feel. So emotions, they provide us, again, this very precious source of information. And I think a lot of us, when we're struggling, we're asking why. Why am I feeling like this? And I don't know if that happens to you, but most people, we feel like we're going to a cycle. I can't really figure out why I'm feeling the way I am. So I think a better question is, what are my emotions or my symptoms asking of me, right? Because if the pain is increasing in my knees, clearly telling me that I need to rest, perhaps search for a doctor or do something else. And emotionally in the mind, we do exactly the same. So most of us, we have this tendency to have two baskets for emotions, the positive emotions and the negative ones. And of course, this makes sense, right? Because some emotions we like to feel, some emotions we don't like to feel. But the problem is that typically we allow positive emotions to have the full experience. But then when we are enduring negative emotions, some of us might block them, or we'll distract, we'll ignore, we'll repress. We don't allow ourselves to actually sit with those and explore and understand what's going on. And so the second idea I would like to challenge you to include in how you think about mental health is to make a shift from positive versus negative emotion to pleasant versus unpleasant emotions. Because a pleasant emotion is something I like experiencing, and an unpleasant one that I don't like to experience. But when I think about emotions as pleasant or unpleasant, then we are thinking about emotions in terms of having a role, having a purpose. So a very important aspect for mental health is realizing that every emotion is relevant and necessary. So it becomes a little bit more like a game, that we become curious and researchers about our own minds. Regardless of what we're feeling, we start to decode, what does this mean? What is this emotion hinting me to become aware of or to do? And so our emotions, even though sometimes they might feel complex, they do have their own internal wisdom, right? And this is because we are programmed, since we're born, we're very much programmed to act on our needs, right? If you think about how much of our well-being, how much of our satisfaction levels depends on being able to appropriately detect our needs. Let's think about physical needs, for example. If you think about feelings such as hunger, thirst, or sleep, right? Maybe right now I could drink water and it would be just a normal experience. But if I'm very, very thirsty and I have the chance to drink water, it will become a really fantastic experience, right? Now imagine that if you're feeling super thirsty and you don't really understand what is your need, and you think like, well, I'm gonna try and cope with my thirst by ordering a pizza, and then you eat a pizza. How do you feel, right? It doesn't make sense. But emotionally, that's what happens a lot of times. We're not able to clearly understand our emotional needs. And we try to do things. We read online, we talk to friends, we try to implement different strategies, but sometimes it seems like they're not doing their job, right? So when we talk about emotional needs, it's not as clear, right? Physical needs, they are very straightforward. We know them since we're born. Emotional needs like rest, recharge, time for yourself, high quality sleep, spending time with significant others, it's not always as clear. And so that's why awareness is such an important tool. And when we talk about the actionable insights, I will start with a lot of things connected with awareness. Because if you have a sharp awareness of what's going on with you, then it's much easier to understand what can we do to cope with the things that we are enduring. And so I'd like to challenge you for a quick poll, just to make this a little bit interactive. If you can go to your Slido, or just scan the QR code. I have a question for you, and you'll see why I'm inserting this question right now. So if you could add 1 hour to your days, what would you do? Okay, let's just think that you could add 1 hour to your days for, let's say, 6 months. What would you be doing in those 1 hour? And let me just stop presenting for a moment so that I can just make sure I'm in the right window, just to see. Sorry, mine is opening just to see if I can share with you. Okay, so we have time with loved ones, walk, read, sleep, journaling, reading, meditate, sports, relaxing, rest, doing nothing, automate stuff, workouts. Good. Relax. As you're inserting your own answers and as you're thinking about this in yourself, my next question for you, just for you to reflect, is what does your answer suggest about your life right now? So take a few seconds, try and see what comes to mind. Okay, I'll go back to the presentation. Okay. So for example, if I'm saying that I would for sure sleep, okay, what could this mean about my life, right? Or if I'm saying that I would relax, what would this mean about my life, right? So most of you that were suggesting that perhaps you would sleep, this indicates that probably you're not sleeping as much as you should, right? Or if I would read, perhaps I'm missing enough time to read. Or spending time with others, perhaps I'm not spending enough time with meaningful others. So this becomes, I think it's one of the easiest questions in the world. We can ask it on a weekly basis, and typically our first instinct, it hints to one of our emotional needs that perhaps is not having the adequate response. Okay, so perhaps this could be exercise number one that you could add to your mental health toolbox, just to start increasing your awareness on these topics. And so, starting with this dive on some of the essentials of mental health, I've been interacting a lot with product managers, and one of the things, as a psychologist, of course, I'm very much interested in understanding some of the common challenges of mental health, but in particular, some of the unique things that would apply to product managers to a higher extent than all of us. And I'm curious to see if you agree, if you feel in your skin, in everyday experience, some of these unique stressors that a PM goes through. So I thought of three main ones, and then we can discuss them perhaps at the end, right? And the first one is speed and scope of change. We're all going through this, but I believe that product managers are experiencing this at a much higher intensity level. So I don't know if you agree, but Shelley Palmer said that today is the slowest day of your life. It for sure seems like it, right? Things seem to be speeding up all the time. And two of the most important consequences this brings is that what we know now is becoming like with a short lifespan. And based on my understanding of what a product manager does, it's even shorter, right? There's this confidence that we have in the tools we master nowadays that perhaps in 6 months' time, in a year time, we'll have to catch up. We'll have to do a lot of learning. And this also means that we're all, and you guys in particular, are living in an ever-increasing VUCA world. In other words, in a world that is becoming more volatile, more uncertain, more complex, and more ambiguous. And so, I mean, in a sense, this could feel refreshing, right? We keep learning new stuff. I think the biggest concern, in my opinion, is the pace. You know, the pace and the fact that you're being forced to learn at this rhythm. And so the challenge is that you have to continuously learn and adapt, right? I think that's the straightforward challenge. But the risk for mental health is that, in a way, this increases our stress, right? Even if I'm enjoying what I'm learning, there's this constant demand in terms of my energy levels. And there's this concept I'd like to share with you. I don't know if you ever heard about LCUs. It's called life change units. So a few decades ago, psychologists were having a whole debate on how do we measure stress, you know, and if I'm enduring a certain amount of stress, should I be worried about or not? And one of the main conclusions about life change units is that the fact that the experience is positive or negative is not so important. The important thing is the amount of change that is being introduced in my life, right? So you can think of some of the most typical positive, typically people say positive experiences if you perhaps change positions in a company, you change companies, you change countries, you marry, you have kids. Most people would agree that these are highly positive experiences. However, if they induce a lot of change in your life, they can become very, very stressful, right? So the fact that you can have to always keep learning and adapting, I believe this becomes a very unique stressor of product managers. So this is one. The second one is working in complex cross-functional teams, right? So, I mean, from my experience working in an interdisciplinary team, it feels great. It feels also refreshing, exciting. However, based on what I've learned from product managers, you're not just another member of the team. You're the central piece. I keep going back to this image of these old clocks. You have all those little wheels that connect into a central piece, right? And the way I see product managers is in a way being the central piece where so many different things are connected to, right? And so one of the main headaches I've heard is that there's a lot of problems and tensions when we, in a way, connect specialists that might have like a more microscope view of their very particular expertise or field versus someone as you guys that need to have like an helicopter view, a bird eyes view, right? And so it's not about the right and wrong, but it's about the continuous tensions because different roles have different responsibilities. And so in a way, the challenge here is that I believe it's very energy demanding, right? This continuous availability to manage, to negotiate, to solve tensions, solve problems coming from multiple directions. I've worked with product managers that were very, very close to a burnout, and it was pretty much linked with this almost need, and this also connects with culture, right? But this need to be 24/7 connected, always available to be there to solve problems, to manage discussions, to run meetings. And so the risk is, I think it's fairly obvious, increased anxiety and exhaustion linked to what we could call a lower perception of control and decision fatigue. If you think about most of the situations you experience high stress in your life, most of the times I would say that you're experiencing low control. It's almost as if we feel like we can handle it. We feel like we can't directly change what we're going through. As we're taking part in a lot of decisions, in a lot of meetings, in a lot of conversations and problem solving, typically decision fatigue occurs, right? Where we start to feel like we can't make decisions with the same level of clarity and the same level of confidence. And so just to introduce you also to a more specific concept in psychology, when you share with a psychologist that you're going through periods of anxiety, periods of stress, one of the things they'll have a conversation about is pretty much explaining to you what's going on with our brain. And the awesome thing is that our brain does these two questions in less than a second. And we do it all the time. It's a subconscious part of our brain, like that back program that is always running. So the first question we ask, our brain is trying to assess in any situation, the level of challenge or threat. So it's almost as if your brain is asking, to what extent does this situation challenge or threatens me? You can even think it of a scale of 1 to 10, right? And you produce a score. And immediately afterwards, we assess our confidence in our ability to cope with that. So to what extent do I believe I'm able to handle this situation? And this becomes like a balance, right? And I think you can guess what will happen. So when we feel that our perception of challenge or threat is greater than your ability to cope with the situation, stress increases. And when the opposite happens, right, when you're able to lower your perception of challenge or threat and increase your perception of ability to cope, stress will decrease. Now, this has a very interesting link with the imposter syndrome, which we'll talk in a moment, right? Because the imposter syndrome is kind of a very sneaky system inside of our heads because it makes the perception of challenge seem a little bit greater, but especially makes our confidence in our ability to cope with a certain situation to lower. And so we kind of become fixed in a situation where things always seem to be beyond what we're currently able to do, right? And that's why when other people give us validation and they actually recognize that we did a great job, we might feel like an imposter, like they don't know the struggles I've been through to get here, right? More in a few minutes. So we've talked about speed and scope of change and the fact that you need to work in complex cross-functional collaborative teams. The third one is perhaps the one I've heard most of the times with the sentence, it's always our fault. Whatever happens is always our fault. So this high accountability, the high level of demand, the high level of responsibility that you're enduring, perhaps on a much more frequent basis than the rest of other professionals. So typically, I mean, when we try to measure the quality and impact, let's say, of a designer's work, it seems like something that is a lot more straightforward, right? It feels like it's something more limited. I can clearly understand it versus the work and contributions of a product manager. Because, I mean, I think your contributions are connected with so many different things that I think there's the risk of also being diluted in the contributions of many others, right? And this becomes a problem because there's nothing wrong with high accountability to the extent that we can also clearly have an understanding of our work and the recognition of our work. But whenever we can't clearly grasp our contribution or how we changed or influenced the outcomes, then again, mental health might suffer. And so I think the challenge of this particular stressor is trying to manage our perfectionism, which a lot of times is connected also with being professional. We believe that as professionals, we need to do our best. And if we're developing a product, we need to make sure that we can carry it through to conclusion. And so managing perfectionism, managing self-confidence, trying to maintain our emotional robustness, right? Being able to cope emotionally with the things that happen. And so the risk here is the increased uncertainty and complexity, which may in turn aggravate imposter syndrome as the duration of stress increases. Now, I mean, of course, probably you have products that are developed in shorter periods of time than longer periods of time. But the biggest issue to recall about stress is the duration. Good. So a lot of times people will have this conversation and they ask themselves, do you see the glass half full or half empty? And what I like to say is that it's not important to see the glass as half full or half empty. It's how long you hold the glass, right? I don't know if you have a glass in front of you. I have one, right? So if you try to hold a glass or a bottle, like a very light object in front of you, we can do it, no problem. And this is the same with stress. Stress is great for short term, right? We can experience peaks of stress just as long as then we can relax. Now, this glass of water maybe weighs like, I don't know, to 100 grams, 200 grams. If someone would force me to hold this glass for 10 hours, even something as light as this glass would create a big injury in my shoulder. And so this is incredibly important because sometimes we get stuck on frequency, so number of times I'm going through stress or intensity. It's actually not that important. It's the duration that is most important. And that's why the ability to unplug is absolutely crucial for mental health. Sometimes we disregard those very basic advices for mental health because we kind of feel like I want to hear something more advanced or complex, because if it's more advanced or complex, it will work even better. But there's a lot of popular wisdom in a lot of the basic advices for mental health. So having enough sleep, having a nice diet, doing exercise, being able to clearly unplug for a few hours, those are very basic advice and they work wonders because they help to decrease this duration. Okay? And so from our mental health essentials to these unique stressors, what are some of the challenges that as a product manager you should be on the lookout for? In other words, what would be some of the consequences that could result from your work as a product manager? So the first one is cognitive overload, right? We're going to be talking about cognitive overload, burnout, and imposter syndrome. They connect, right? It's almost like a staircase. So most people, right, when we go through a burnout, unfortunately, we don't get a reminder 2 days before saying, hey, you're about to burn out. We don't. And it's quite scary because most people, the majority of people I've worked with, that went into a full burnout, they were surprised by it, which sounds crazy, right? Because it has nothing to do with IQ, nothing to do with how wise they were, but they just became so used to the typical symptoms that the body reached a stage that just most people, what they'll say is, I woke up and I couldn't get out of bed. Like I couldn't get myself out of bed. So where does this all start? With cognitive overload. It all starts with this feeling that our brain, if you think of your brain as a sponge, right? Your brain has been working too hard most of the days, right? And I think your role as a product manager, there's a lot of intensive cognitive processing, right? A lot of information going through your mind and through your head. One of the early signs that we're literally struggling to cope with a load is mental fog. You start to lose mental clarity, right? And this is the decision fatigue that we're talking about. Perhaps problems that we would solve in a second, now they just become complex. Now we can't have the full grasp of the situation. Why is this a problem? Because if we're not able to rest, this will get worse. And most of us, what will we do, right? We will go into a vicious cycle where I try to compensate my mental fog by working harder. And there we go, right? And as I work harder, I increase my stress, I decrease my rest, and I lose mental focus. This eventually leads also to mistakes, leads to more conflicts, to other sort of tensions, right? So cognitive overload is not a diagnosis, it's not a syndrome, but it's definitely the earliest of the signs that we should be on the lookout for, right? Again, what we said in the beginning, emotions have a purpose. And this is a very clear information telling us to slow down, change our system. The second one is burnout, right? And burnout could be defined as this state of complete exhaustion at a physical, mental, and or emotional level. People tend to think that because burnout is almost a mental health topic, that is just a mental kind of topic, but it's not. It's actually not, because we become completely drained of adrenaline, of endorphins. A lot of the hormones that are designed to give us energy, we become fully drained. And so at different times, depending on what's happening, we may be at a lower or a higher risk of burning out. So I'd like to walk you through what are some of the typical stages from being at a great place, thriving and growing, all the way down to burnout. And then I'd like to challenge you to a second poll just to see where do you feel you are right now. So most of us, we would love to be at this stage, thriving and growing. You feel that you're flourishing, you're experiencing high levels of energy, enthusiasm, engagement. You wake up, you're really eager to get going, start your work, have a strong sense of purpose, fulfillment, you're optimistic about life. Some other times, we might not be to that high level. We could be cohesive and stable. So this means that you're basically completely capable of dealing with the daily stresses, the challenges. You bounce back, right? The definition of resilience. You bounce back from problems and setbacks, even though they're bothersome, you can completely cope with them and they don't compromise your well-being. Now, in some other situations, we go into what we would call struggling but coping. For the Portuguese people here, it's the typical, when you typically ask someone, how are you doing? And they say like, nunca pior, They'll say something like, yeah, I'm not great, I'm not bad. This is the struggling but coping. So this is a very important stage because if we are currently here, any tactic we can use, any strategy we can use to recover is going to be very much faster and much easier than if we move into the other steps. So when you're struggling but coping, you now start to feel that stress has a more acute impact. Suddenly you can't unplug, Maybe you shut off your computer, but your mind keeps processing some of the conversations, keeps thinking about some of the problems. And here, fatigue starts to get installed. Then we get into the most risky stuff. So languishing at risk. Here we start to jump between moments where we're sort of okay to moments where we start to feel a certain desperation. Right? We feel intense fatigue. We feel like even if we get a good night of sleep, we're not recovering the energy levels. It's as if every single day, regardless of the things you try to do, you can rest, but you can't recharge. And so as the days go along, you just feel that your energy keeps dropping, and keeps dropping. If we are unable to do something about it right here, then unfortunately, this leads us to our final stage, right? And this final stage is exhaustion and burnout, right? Where we just have been enduring prolonged stress for too long. And it's even weird because I don't know what experience you've had with people that were really on a full burnout, but people will say that they seem very different, almost as if their personality is changing, because one of the things that happens is this sense of detachment and apathy. It's almost as if even the most warm and sensitive people that care a lot about their job, they just get to a point where they don't care, right? Is this inability to feel anything. And this sometimes is not just about your job, it just expands to your relationships. So it's kind of a serious condition. So I have a new one for you. Okay, I just needed to give me 10 seconds because I just need to change an option in the poll. Okay, but I'm going to challenge you to try and decide at which stage are you right now. Okay, so give me just a quick second just before I show you, just to change here the poll because I wasn't able to do it. Okay, and now you will be able to do it. Okay, so now you can go and see what, try to be honest about it. Where do you feel you are right now? The first time I did this, I was running a kind of a webinar like this, but it was in a big, very large group of people. And so we had about 500 people there, and we were very worried.
So,
yeah.
So someone has asked, if you can share the scale again. So
yeah. Give me just a second.
You can. Thank you.
Okay.
I mean, I think it was the burnout scale.
Yeah.
The previous one with the
Ah,
description.
okay.
Yeah, that one. Thanks.
Of course, this is not a formal diagnosis, okay? But it's an exercise of your awareness.
On your professional opinion, the people are usually more optimistic or more pessimistic? So that I can.
I would say that culture does influence significantly.
Okay.
It depends on the leaders that are there and the relationship that the leaders have. But in that session in particular, I was talking about almost 50% of the working force, they were struggling but coping or languishing and at risk, which was.
Well, I think you'll be surprised by our answers because I'm checking them.
Let me just go. I wasn't still seeing them. Okay, give me just a second.
Interesting results. Yeah.
Yeah. I think you said 20% at struggling but coping, and
just check. Okay. Wow. So 0% thriving and growing, 13% cohesive and stable, 19% languishing at risk, and 69% struggling but coping. Wow. This is very significant. I think this for sure should be something that we could, hopefully, the ones shifting into the Q&A, I think this would be a super important topic for us to talk. Because this is it worries me to one extent, but at the same time, it's, if there's a moment where we should act, is exactly when we're struggling but coping, because we still have mental freshness and availability to respond well to most of the solutions that can help us recover. Okay. All right. So just shifting back. Good. Also, it's going to be, we're just one slide away or two slides away just to move into the tools and the strategies that we can use. I think it's also going to be interesting to see of how much of the actionable insights are you currently implementing, and to see if if your current state is the result of the pressures you've been enduring, or if it's more about like your coping responses and some of the strategies you're having. Just a quick data, just very, very quickly. This was one of the most comprehensive, one of the largest studies done by McKinsey on 50,000 employees. You can see in terms of people that were on the last stage, on burnouts, across different countries, it's a very significant percentage. Because when we say burnouts, this is burnout, diagnosed burnout. It's almost as if, how are you coming to work? You know, how are you even able to function? And these are very significant percentages, being the lowest 19%, all the way to 38%. In the right, what they call distress levels are the languishing and at risk. So are the ones that are on the verge of collapsing into burnout if they don't change their course. And it goes all the way to 43%. So it's very severe. And I think like my perception of your community is that you're all very much aware and sensitive to the role of mental health. I've had numerous of conversations with leaders and decision makers where sometimes they're complaining about certain issues in the company, and they would be surprised because a lot of them would be solved not so much through a certain type of procedure or a certain type of program, but actually increasing mental health or changing features of the culture or changing features of the team, increasing psychological safety, increasing cohesiveness, right? Things that are more connected with people's behavior rather than very structural changes in the company. Which leads me to the last one. And I'll leave this as a teaser if you want to talk more about imposter syndrome at the end. So a lot of things can lead to imposter syndrome, from personality, our relationship patterns, previous experiences with failure, our leaders, our culture, right? They all kind of make or break. They make it more vulnerable or more resilient to imposter syndrome. In therapy, one of the most typical conversations that could guide you through understanding what is going on if I'm really into a full typical imposter syndrome kind of situation, if I feel stuck. So this is, of course, an analogy or a metaphor, but our mind is made of different parts. And typically, we all have these parts. The problem is that in some of us, some of these parts will be more dominant than others. So the inner critic, the perfectionist, the anxious, the protector part, and the exiled. Just giving you a quick through, then we can talk about it. It's just a little teaser. So typically, if I have imposter syndrome, probably I will have a very, very dominant inner critic, right? So this means a very judgmental part that relentlessly questions our abilities or accomplishments, making us feel we're not good enough, right? And that's why we don't respond well to compliments. We don't respond well to things going well, because we're always suspicious that things will not go well. So the inner critic is one of it. Another part that adds a lot of fuel to the fire is our perfectionist part, because this part sets usually unrealistic high standards and just feels failure and mistakes to a very high level. It's not just I failed. It's like my whole life failed. It's a part that if it becomes dominant, it really exaggerates how we feel about not being perfect. And one of the problems, and that's where imposter syndrome can connect with burnout, is that it convinces us to overwork. I'll work even harder so that no one suspects that I'm not that good. Which links with our anxious parts. And this part worries about being exposed as incompetent or as a fraud. That's where the name comes from, right? Being found out as an imposter. This makes us very hypervigilant, very negatively biased. What this means is, if I'm insecure about how others perceive my confidence, I will look for certain signs and how people look at me, how they respond, that will just confirm my fears. That's the tricky part of imposter syndrome. And also, because we're hypervigilant, this increases the duration of stress. Then we have a protector part. And the protector part, in a way, tries to help us cope with it. But the problem is, in this part alone, protecting us is trying to avoid suffering. And so, again, this part either invites us to avoid situations, or like, I'm not going to go to that meeting, I'll not be exposed to that situation, or again, pushing us to overwork. Finally, we also have what is called an exiled part. This is perhaps the kind of a deeper part, which connects with past experiences, right? Past experiences of shame, of failure, of inadequacy. It's almost as if we have this deeper wound that is being pressured when we go through different professional commitments, okay? I'll leave this if you want to come back at the end. Finally, we've done this whole deep dive on mental health essentials, unique stressors, and common challenges. What can we do? And I really try to run away from just the, tip-based, do this, don't do that. I want to start by saying that whatever we do and whatever we feel, it's always in a continuum from individual variables, right? Things like your personality, how much you know yourself, how well you cope with your skills, but at the same time, they connect with the culture of the place you work, the levels of psychological safety in your team, the kind of the mindset and practices of leadership. I mean, you can have a great personality, you can know yourself 100%, have great coping skills. If you work in a toxic environment, pretty much mental health is gonna suffer the same way. And so focusing on the things we can control, because that's pretty much where we can go. So I thought of creating this idea of your mental health toolbox. And in this mental health toolbox, you'll find 3 big sections, okay? The first one is self-care. There's a lot on it. The second one is support systems. And the third one is how can we make a great use of professional help? In this case, working with a psychologist. So regarding self-care, I'll say this again. There's a lot of advice that sound basic, but they sound basic because they're highly, highly efficient. So I'll start with something that, of course, needs to be adapted to your life and your current circumstances, but rituals and routines are incredibly important, right? To the extent that you're able to do it, if you have the chance to have a starting ritual, right? This means that you wake up, for example, for the first hour of the day, there's a lot of evidence suggesting that if for the first hour of the day, you're not connected, you're not digitally being stimulated at all, this significantly improves your mental health throughout that day, right? If you're able to exercise before work, do some sort of meditation, reading a book, getting the day organized, just from 15 minutes to 1 hour and something, try to start the day in a way that you have full control. And this sets the tone for the rest of the day. A lot of people respond very well also with a wrapping ritual, right? How well do you unplug from work? How well are you able to limit emails or any digital stimulation, especially if your day-to-day routine is in front of a screen? This becomes even more important. Exercising, getting the next day organized. So you can see that the starting ritual and the wrapping ritual are all about shaping the mindset for the day and wrapping up the mindset of the day. This helps you to transition to the next day, hopefully in a better state of mind than you entered. Second one is one of my favorite ones, called solitude. And solitude is not necessarily being alone, but my favorite definition is freedom from the input of others. Think about your day. We keep absorbing new information, right? We talk to people, we're in the meetings, we're always inputs, right? We're always absorbing information. This leads to cognitive overload. So having a chance to meditate, take a power nap, go for a walk, take some personal reflection time just for yourself, this can significantly help, right? This is also known as a concept of mental hygiene. Just as we want to maintain our physical hygiene, solitude allows us to do the mental hygiene. So cleaning up our mind, providing clarity and allowing us to recharge. Then physical activity. Maybe some of you are saying like, yeah, I read this all the time, but physical activity is not just a psychological strategy. It's actually a biological one. So every time we're stressed or anxious, our body is producing an hormone called cortisol, which again, when it accumulates, it leads to other types of problems, other health problems. Physical exercise produces a hormone called endorphins. And endorphins are one of the only and one of the most efficient blockers of cortisol. So physical activity is incredibly important. If you're going through a period of stress that you have low control, right? I can change my manager, I can change this team, I can change this kind of headaches, I can change another personal life problem. So physical activity, you're really having like a biohack of your mental health. So it's definitely worth making it part of your routine. Then managing your energy, I'll provoke a bit. I really don't think we manage time. We talk a lot about managing time. I think we manage our energy because time just is, right? But if you're able to have some freedom, some autonomy, if you have a sharp awareness of the moment of the day where you have more energy and you have great decision-making skills, you can make managing meetings and other work commitments work for you. So this is one of the images we use, for example, at Next Level Hub, when we talk about mental health. We use this analogy of the glass, basically to say that if you're able to recognize moments of the day where you have your peak energy, right? This is called your bio prime time, right? For example, for me, it's very early in the morning. So every time I can wake up really early, I know that for the next 2 hours, I can do some of my best work, right? And we should optimize those type of hours. Then we have our regular energy that you need to manage. And some of us were talking about this at the beginning, right? That we should have an app that tells us the energy levels. The most important thing for mental health is that we should have sort of an alarm to stop here, right? Because when every single day we get used to, I need more energy, so I go to my reserve, this is where your mental health lives. And if we get used to every single day, I'll just get through the day because I'm pushing to my reserves, that's typically the best way to go into a burnout. So we should definitely learn where to stop, where to draw the line. It's something that sometimes psychologists can help us, or someone else can help us identify, because for ourselves it's not that easy. And finally, work-life balance, right? Trying to figure out what works for you. Some of us, we like integration. Some of us, we like segmentation, right? I think it also depends on your life. I think integration is tricky. Some people do it very well, but it means that you're not necessarily unplugging, right? You're just trying to manage personal life and professional commitments all together. Segmentation is when you're able to create a clear separation between both. Where I'm looking at the watch, we're short of time. I think I'm gonna skip the next slide.
But yes, yeah, we are getting a bit tight on the time.
Yeah, I know. So basically, I'm going to skip this, but I'm going to make this available. Then you can check. It was just a little exercise, okay? Then we'll go back. Okay, so just to wrap up, second part is your support system. And here, quality is way more important than quantity. I mean, there's no formula for it, but usually surrounding ourselves with people that they don't judge us and they seem to care for us unconditionally, this really changes mental health, because we are tribal beings. So we respond well to this type of stats, right? And people that listen to us. So as you can see, right, thoughts in your heads, it's just all juggled in. When we can acknowledge them, they start to become more clear. We can write them down, but whenever we have someone that clearly listens to what we have to say, our mind gets better organized. And also in terms of support system, having a personal and professional network. It's not to kind of brag about you guys, but I think you do an awesome work. Impostor PM, I think, is just a perfect example of a supportive professional network. So belonging to one can significantly increase also our mental health. On a personal level, and even perhaps on a professional level, you can also look for people with the 4 types of Cs. People that can help you as a collaborator, maybe a team member, someone that knows as much as you do, and they can add insights to what you're saying. A coach would be someone that has a higher level of expertise than you that you can learn from. A cheerleader, someone that, they just support you no matter what. And a cheddar, just like the cheese, you have the holes, are typically, I'll say that it's that friend with a high critical thinking spirit that will poke holes on your ideas, but at the same time, they're doing this to help. Finally, to wrap up, a psychologist can help in 2 ways. It can help your organization and it can help you. From an organizational point of view, it's a big part of what I do. It can significantly improve team dynamics. It can improve communication. It can improve culture through all of these ways you can see here. but it can also help you from a personal standpoint, right? One of the first steps for mental health, as we've been saying over and over, is knowing yourself. And psychotherapy is the process of getting to know yourself. If you can have a deeper understanding of your thoughts, reactions, emotions, and actions, then you're much better equipped to do something about it. Typically, psychologists and psychotherapists, they can help you improve your resilience. They will empower you with tools to recover, protect, enhance your mental health. And I know this is a very particular topic. It can really make a difference in how you cope with failure, right? Helping us shift from a more dramatic and painful way of dealing with a failure to an optimized, kind of more hands-on way to think about failure. And so, as a last idea, I don't know if this is actually a used metaphor or not, but as I was listening to Sara, Daniela, Nuno, Javier, as I was listening and learning from them, I came to think of you guys as almost as a maestro in an orchestra, you know, because as a product manager, you're not just in a way leading a team, you're kind of syncing a diverse group of talents. You're trying to get each section of the orchestra to play its part correctly. They're all specialists in their own instruments, but you're the one that is trying to guide them to have like a unified vision. And so in order to do that, I think your most important ingredients are clarity, adaptability, and resilience. The only way you can get those, or the best way you can get those, is actually to take care of your mental health, right? Taking care of your mental health is not just taking care of you, but it's also taking care of your career. So I'll end for now. Okay, I'd like to thank you also for this bit. And now, Sarah, I don't know if you want to explain how it works, next steps.
Yeah, so just a brief before we go, because some people will move to the other room for the Q&A session. So we'll have now 30 minutes of Q&A, which will be pretty much exploratory for everyone to participate. So we'll have to move to the new channel. But before doing that, just to thank Celso presence from today, and also let you know that we at Impostor PM, we are making a partnership with Next Level Hub, and we are like offering discounts basically for people that wants to be follow up with the Celso and his team, and we'll do a lot of more stuff with the Next Level Hub team in another initiative. So you'll see Celso and probably someone from his team coming on board, and just to share the knowledge, to help us to cope with our mechanisms and give us tools to help out on these matters, right, on the mental health and well-being. So yeah, so for now is this that we need to tell you, and that we'll share all the contact that Celso shared here as well. We'll share the presentation with you guys, and that's it. So let's move to the other room for those that show the interest to go to the Q&A session, right? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone. Thanks, Celso.
Thank you.
Have a nice holiday.
Yeah.